Welcome, you guys, the internet, our friends. I'm Loren O'Brien, the host of Black Sheep and Bad Apples, which is what you're listening to right now.
Yeah, you are.
And as just a code of protocol, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the boys. We got Mr. Sam over here.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Everybody's back in town is Mr. Joe.
Hey, what's up?
Was saying. As last and always least, just kidding. I love you. Our producer and co-host Sean.
Surfing the boards.
well, how'd he do?
Sean, let me try that again.
Dark Master Hill.
Our co-host and producer Sean. Yeah. I like that was a duck sound, but it was still like the air horn sound. That was good. So how you guys feeling tonight? You guys ready to get depressed?
Yeah.
Beat you to it.
Yeah. I was going to say I'm already there.
Damn.
I just want
room.
people to be down at my level. So
Yeah, I thank you for coming down and talking to me for a little
Yeah,
bit.
no, I'm glad that we got it on record
company.
too.
We're glad you're here.
If you guys are feeling depressed, I want to introduce you guys to the Black Sheep and Bad Apples group. We get together every Sunday under the bridge.
And we throw rocks.
Yeah,
Oh, I've been
And-
going above the bridge, and it's been making me real depressed.
because you can hear us, right?
Yeah. I'm where is everybody? I just pace back
You're
and
like, I hear
forth,
rocks
but-
being thrown at cans.
I don't like it.
No, and what we're doing tonight, we're talking about something that Black Sheep and Bad Apples is not. Tonight, what we're going to be talking about, just a little bit, no, actually the whole episode, we're going to be talking about cults and cult deprogramming.
Like a baby horse?
You lied to
like
me.
a baby horse.
You got to
Is this an
deprogram a baby
intervention?
horse?
You told me I was joining a cult and I could
Sean,
be co-host
Sean,
on it.
I just need you to listen.
And now you're trying to tell me it's bad.
Podcast, not cold.
Sean,
I see the confusion.
What I really need you to do is listen to what's going to happen tonight
You just
and develop your opinion as we go
I
along.
really wish I brought a fucking cheeseburger.
you misled me there. That's all.
I didn't mean to. I apologize.
As long as the
Don't
paycheck
form
keeps
your
coming.
opinion too quick. Like some of these cults may be good ones.
Don't
some of them
jump
make sense.
to conclusions.
We were just
But-
talking
well,
about
With the risky jump to conclusion, Matt. Is there a nail under that tile? Who knows? Brought to you by Risky Mats.
Oh, well, that was a live plug for all you cats and kittens out there.
Good times.
So I'm just gonna, without further ado, kind of dive into this. There's an interesting space in between beliefs, evidence, and faith. It's a space that consists of dedication to beliefs, the evidence supporting those beliefs, and persevering when the proof is contradictory to the belief. It's an interesting space because one can keep their beliefs behind an iron fence, a fence through which evidence to the contrary cannot pass. The contrary of that is one that can allow ideas and new information to permeate their membrane of understanding. It can be a rigid position to hold, especially in the age of information, misinformation, and disinformation. Ideas should be criticized and, under the right circumstances, changed. But with the world of the internet, there's a pretty good chance that whatever you believe has been criticized or debunked, albeit some more convincingly than others. So where should one put their line in the sand? Does holding tight to a belief take more energy than changing one? Does the need to analyze and criticize all of one's belief constantly, is that something we have to do? No definitive answer will be found here, but there are contexts in which a person can and should change their minds. The best example of this is simply people who are in cults, baby.
Woo! Yeah.
we're all in one. We just don't know what cult we're in.
Oh, yeah.
Cult Earth.
Or we're in like a sub-cult.
Is that like a subreddit, but for real life?
But for real life. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So, how does a person enter into the belief in a cult? What's the catalyst that allows one to put aside their prior beliefs and enter into a bond with a group of individuals? What allows them to change their beliefs in order to be incorporated? And what is it that finally changes somebody's mind about who their leader is and realizes the intentions are of self-interest? What is the stimulus that people respond to that allows them to change their minds and leave these situations? It takes a lot of understanding human nature and a lot more empathy and sympathy to understand. So tonight's episode is about the nature of opinions and understanding and how one becomes programmed into and deprogrammed from a cult. Any thoughts or comments before we continue, guys?
Ooh.
Excellent.
I'm biting my tongue already.
Yeah, I could tell you're very reluctant.
I'm just going to hold my comments until appropriate.
So to get into deprogramming, it's best to start with talking about how one gets programmed or indoctrinated, brainwashed into a new esoteric belief system and how those systems can become so powerful over someone's mind. So what's a cult? Well, there's some basic characteristics of many cults, and what we're going to do tonight in this podcast is give some descriptions of them that don't necessarily mean people who or groups that have these traits are cults, but you might want to keep your eye on them. But also, not all of these traits apply to each and every cult, although there is a through line that many of these groups and religious orders have. These traits can, but not always do, include the following. Excuse me. An unquestioning commitment and dedication to the cult's leader and their doctrine, ideology, and methodology. Followers of a cult will consider everything said by their leader as the capital T truth and follow it closely as if it were law. Sometimes even more than law. Very fun. Interacting with the group using mind-altering practices such as chanting, speaking in tongues, harsh work routines and living conditions, and shame sessions, which we're going to get into here in a little while. So another trait is...
They're the fun ones when you see them really get used in a church scenario.
And it's super weird, dude. Yeah, we're not going to have a whole lot of examples of this stuff tonight, but we're going to describe some of this stuff.
Well,
and
if you want examples, just
dork.
listen to the Jim Jones tapes.
Mm-hmm. Very good example.
Bunch of old women yelling at people for it.
Yeah, and so another one of these traits is the leader or leaders dictate to their followers, rather, how they should act, feel, and think. This can sometimes even go as far as to tell people what jobs they should have, what clothes to wear, who they should date, where they should live, who to marry, and when to have kids, if at all. They will also exalt the leader to such a degree that the leader becomes beyond reproach. Cult members will hold their leaders as a messiah, special being, or person on a special mission to save the world. The leaders view themselves as beyond reproach and find themselves free from accountability to group members, church leaders, or the government. The group has a polarizing them versus us mentality, which may lead to conflicts with normalized society.
Megalomania?
Yeah, baby. The group will teach or simply imply that the mission is so important that the group can justify doing what are commonly seen as immoral acts, such as lying, stealing, cheating, murder. This can get to such a degree that people will participate in activities they weren't likely to have participated in before joining the cult. Another trait. There's a lot of them. And I actually cut this list really short, even though it's pretty long. Yeah. So another one is that the leadership induces shame and guilt in order to control and influence their followers. And this is done through peer pressure and subtle persuasion, which we're also going to get into later. Another trait is required subservience to the group and the leadership that often leads to a form of isolationism where members either don't or aren't allowed to leave the cult's property and will sometimes cut contact between themselves and their family and friends. Members of the group are expected to donate inordinate or unreasonable amounts of money, time, or both to the group and its activities. And this is a fucking big one right here. The group is constantly recruiting. The group is focused on money, particularly in regards to the aforementioned recruiting. They gotta have those members so that they can keep getting that money. Members are encouraged to live with or only socialize with their group's members. And finally, the loyal members cannot think of or feel that there is life outside of the context of the group. There is no option other than their faith, and anything short of absolute belief is punished by the leader, the group, the self, by way of rejecting the faith, or all of those listed above. And these are just some of the many different ways in which a group will create their cult. There's a lot of variants, and this doesn't apply to all cults, obviously, but it applies in so many fucking cases.
But if, you put that over most of the cults that we know today, with the Scientology going out on the boat, like getting out of there, and Jim Jones going down to Guyana. Like they always kind of isolate. They always try and make their own language. They always try and like either isolate physically or mentally from everyone else in their society.
Have you ever seen the Scientology recruitment place in LA?
Yeah, I went there. The celebrity rehab center
Or whatever it is.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's across the street from the improv school that I went to, the Upright Citizens Brigade. So me and all my
And
classmates,
it was like surrounded by like beautiful gardens and like this majestic
every
stone
Friday
wall
night
and
they
stuff.
do a they play
what is this
Brad
lovely place?
they play
Oh.
Tom Cruise movies.
Scientology.
They play Tom Cruise movies in the garden,
course
and
they do.
anyone's allowed to go. And you get free pizza. And if you're in LA, like 90% of the people who are just walking around there are homeless.
Bro,
Right.
we're going to get into that.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's...
I was just walking up the street and was like, what the heck is this? This is really nice looking. Wow, like it had this wonderful wisteria arbor thing going on and looked very, like
the thing that I learned
castle-groundish.
from-
And as I'm like walking through the gate, I look down, there's this tiny little placard that's like Scientology, something or other, and I was like, oh.
By the way, Scientology
They-
did
yeah,
this.
they
And you're
own
like,
that
oh,
whole
shit,
block,
dude,
right?
fuck that.
Right, and it's like takes up a whole block. Right.
That's what, like, when
I walked around the grounds a little bit, but I definitely didn't
So,
go inside
the
the
big
building.
thing I learned about that whole like little block there is if you drink 2 or 3 beers and then go and use the e-meter, nothing will register and they'll kick you right out. It's a lot of fun for them to be like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? And then like they go and like check someone else's thetans and then they go back to you and like.
So, speaking of like really charming Scientology places, the next question we're going to explore is why these groups are so attractive to participants.
Nice.
And there's several reasons.
Segue.
Yeah, there's several reasons. Thank you. I'm trying to really work
well,
on
I
that.
think
That was
in
a good
Scientology
segue.
they actually do give you a segue.
They do.
They do.
Yeah.
They
like,
do.
but that's only if you get like not clear, but like beigeish, I think it is.
Yeah,
Like-
translucent.
Like
Not
where
transparent.
it looks like you're looking through a fart, and then they'll give you a segue.
So there's several different reasons as to why cults are attractive. And it seems most of these reasons that people are attracted to these cults is because of stress. According to Matt Davis from BigThink.com, cults use a variety of strategies, and their best strategy is selecting a target. As Matt says, quote, most people can be susceptible to cult influence under the right conditions. Research has shown that the people who are the most susceptible to recruitment are stressed, emotionally vulnerable, have tenuous or no family connections, or are living in adverse socioeconomic conditions. New college students are a prime example of good targets for cult recruitment, since they're still forming their identity and have recently been separated from their families. In addition, people who were neglected or abused as children may be easily recruited because they crave validation denied to them in their childhood. There's a bit of false belief out there that cult recruits tend to be mentally ill, but this usually isn't the case. Cults don't want completely unpredictable people to join. Rather, they want relatively stable people who can work to forward the cult's goal and donate money. Relatively healthy people going through stressful periods, therefore, are their prime targets. End quote.
You want some tea?
Well, that also seems to be more of a Western because when you go to like the East, it's a lot of like miracle cures and a lot of like kind of more mystical ways.
Real snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just snake oil salesman. But
Right.
it's a lot of just like mythical thinking. A lot of the cults build from yoga. Like,
Yeah.
I
We're
never
also gonna
trusted
touch on that.
yoga.
Nobody
you
trusts
shouldn't,
yoga.
man.
Honestly, why can
Nope.
people touch their knee to their forehead? It's
Too much-
suspicious,
it's-
and I would go, all right, I'm going to put this right here on Black Sheep and Bad Apples right now.
Oh,
I'm going to
Planting
tell
a
you this
flag,
right
huh?
now. I'm planting this flag on this hill. People
Don't
who
trust
do yoga,
anyone to suck
and-
their own dick.
No, people who can do yoga and touch their knee to their forehead are the fucking aliens, the reptilians that we've been worried about.
If you can touch your knee to your forehead.
Yep. If you can do that via yoga, you're a reptilian. I'm positing that right here on
Need a
this
forehead?
episode.
Like, that's not even like...
No, I know. See, you get... is everybody in here? Everybody's lizard people.
Oh, God.
Jesus. All right. Well,
Sean's like, can't do it.
I'm just going to keep going until one of you guys kills me. So there's a small... There's a small list of things that are common traits members look for when hunting new recruits. From the article How Cults Work, written by Julia Layton, psychologist Michael
An instruction book.
Langone identifies and briefly describes these characteristics in 7 different traits. Number 1 is dependency. There's an intense desire to belong stemming from a lack of self-confidence. Number 2 is unassertiveness, a reluctance to say no or question authority. There's gullibility, number 3, a tendency to believe what somebody says without really thinking about it. Number 4 is low tolerance for uncertainty, a need to have any questions answered immediately in black and white terms. Number 5 is disillusionment with the status quo, a feeling of marginalization within one's own culture and a desire to see that culture change. Number 6 is naive idealism, a blind belief that everyone is good. And finally, number 7, desire for spiritual meaning, a need to believe that life has a higher purpose.
I think I'm a cult leader.
You're what?
Cult leader. I don't have one, but I think I'm like a captain waiting to be a captain of a boat, but he doesn't have one.
Dude, just because you're a band leader doesn't mean you're a cult leader.
Yeah, just because you're a shitty person doesn't mean that you're a cult leader.
Not every
But I'm-
narcissist is
Just
a
because
cult
you're a
leader.
ginger doesn't mean you're a cult leader.
Just because you want
But
to be a
it's
cult leader doesn't
kinda
mean you're a
close.
cult leader.
I don't disagree, and you're not wrong, Sam.
Thank you. I'm not wrong, Sean.
Would you like to read
Sam
some
just
of my
gave him
books?
$50. I don't know what just happened there. But
Hey, give me my money back. How'd you do that?
So, looking at the traits presented earlier, it's easy to see that the main reason one finds themselves in the grasp of a cult is due to the cult's deception and manipulation. Potential new members aren't given the full scope of the work and effort involved. As such, potential recruits are led to see the group as something that it is not. The cult does this intentionally to keep up appearances, which allows them a more broad revenue stream, simply because people aren't willing to contribute to something self-interested. The basic premise of attraction is selling the potential recruit on the ideas of it being a popular, laid-back group that is benevolent in its interactions with the general population. So they literally use deception
hip.
and manipulation.
We're cool.
And popularity. Yeah, exactly. and they present it as, with this
Come have
image
some
of
tea
being
on our bus.
helpful. No, honestly, this reminds me of the youth group church leader that like
Oh, the
turns
cool
his
pastor.
Yeah, the cool pastor. Yeah, he turns his chair around and he and he sits down in it and faces the kids and he's like, "Listen here, kids. Let me tell you about Jesus."
You guys want to rock with Jesus a little bit?
Yeah, that's what these people remind me of.
You know, Jesus was the first rock star.
But then it gets into like
Oh, yeah.
drinking blood and like all that weird stuff after like a couple months.
Lot
And
of
it-
cannibalism.
Jesus drank blood?
no, I'm saying
No, we all drank
I-
his
well,
blood.
and I'm saying
Oh,
like these
right.
recruiters and these cult leaders act like the cool Christian pastor, where they turn the chair around, turn their hat around, they sit in, and they're trying to be your friends, you know, and then they're like, "Hey, you're being my friend. You're being my friend. You know what would really help me out, man? If you could just drink this blood."
Yeah, I see you listen to all that punk music. You know who was really like just like a punk star? The Apostles.
Jesus Christ, dude. So
Have
with
you
the
ever heard of the raps by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
shit bangs, dude.
You like
I
cutting
hear that's
yourself?
where Drake got all
You
his
ever
stuff
tried
from.
nailing it?
So with the group labeling itself beneficial to the community and being provided money via fundraising, an outsider is likely to see these individuals as community-oriented. This allows the new recruit to see themselves as participating in something that benefits society at large and creates a sense of unity in the face of just drastically opposing worldviews which serve to divide humans and keep them from doing the greater good. And I really emphasize some of this language too, simply because like what we're going to talk about later is literally like hippies that were just on the beach smoking weed, and people would walk up to him and be like, "Hey, dude, you like smoking weed? Me too. So does our church. Come join us." And so it's like there's definitely this part of it that's like,
David Koresh's mom did that.
Yeah.
That's how he got his first flock.
yeah, there's like this whole vibe to like cult recruit recruiting to me. That again is like the cool pastor or like the fun church guy that comes to the beach.
David Koresh played the guitar too. He did that.
Exactly. and so
Right.
yeah, it's funny because they
Very
really
charismatic.
yeah, and so they prey on these like college age.
Aviators too, but like, that's another
Aviators.
thing we'll get to, I'm sure, later.
You mean
on.
babyators?
That'll be a whole nother like section of this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So by creating a simple, easily accessible benefit for which the group serves, the optics of their behavior is seen as charitable, which allows potential recruits the optics of being part of a good group of individuals. It gives them like this purpose. Now they're benefiting the world. Recruiters will generally use this veil of goodness to participate in any kind of public setting. This extends to church groups allowed to recruit out of a high school, or a single individual entertaining some ideas in a coffee shop, or fundraisers in the park. Their entire point is to be where their new recruits will be, and learn how to manipulate potential members and their desires for their own will.
It's like taking a bunch of like the like attractive women of your cult and then putting them to a port to hook up with people and then bring back to your cult. Mm-hmm. Like Children of God did.
Yeah, that's
Flirty
exactly
fishing.
it. We're going to talk about Children of God tonight too.
Yeah, that's where it all came from with
Yeah.
the deprogramming.
Hell yeah. And so a lot of cults make their appeal by finding your needs and desires and fears or aspirations to play on. Learning about one's fears and values allows the recruiter to portray their cult in a positive light to the potential recruit. As an example, if one has recently lost a loved one, like a mother or a girlfriend or even a dog or something like that, the cult recruiter may use this information against the potential recruit by playing on their grief and expressing the group's ability to help find meaning and understanding again. Another example is if one has had a recent breakup, the recruiter will use this against the potential recruit by stating that their organization has helped people recover from all sorts of things like bad breakups, and that they can help promote feelings of being fulfilled and confident again, as well as help regulate interpersonal issues. An essential aspect of keeping a potential recruit under the cult's eye is isolation. By separating them, by taking the potential recruit from general society, there's no external force that questions the belief systems and structures involved in the group. They may hold retreats for weeks or have services at times that are inconvenient and overlap with other social obligations, but this is just a technique that they use to interfere with potential recruits' plans and to force them into making a decision about who they'll be spending their time with. Time spent with the group is positively reinforced with things such as love bombing.
Things such as what?
Love bombing, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Love bombing.
Where you're super fucking disappointed at somebody for not doing the thing, but when they do the thing, you're like, dude, I knew you could do it. You're so good. I love you, man. This is why I love. See, you're just so good at this. A bird just hit the window. That was interesting.
Funk.
They heard
Well,
us.
that's Scientology fighting back. But
Right.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
will get a lot of that throughout this whole
Well,
podcast.
and later in the podcast, we'll talk about how birds aren't real.
Even
So
though we basically
Oh.
plugged their fucking
I
organization.
think about that here. Like those CIA transmitters they're just flying through the air that are shaped like
They call 'em
pigeons? You talking about the
Pigeons.
5G
Yeah, yeah,
pigeons?
you know,
the Corona pigeons?
I'm not worried.
nobody believes in.
Yeah.
Pigeons aren't real.
But have you ever seen a baby one?
I haven't.
No.
Are they cute?
I don't know.
All right.
They're not real, so no.
I like what you're saying there.
That actually
never
makes
seen a baby
sense.
pigeon?
No, I haven't. And that makes sense because they're not real because
Yeah.
they're made of. Okay, back on the same page. So before we keep
So
propagating,
cults, something a little
cults.
solid
So
here.
isolation also helps, as we've previously mentioned. It ensures the group maintains control over their potential recruits' feedback structure. This in turn allows the cult to hold an unchallenged monopoly of truth that all followers must observe.
Yeah.
It's really kind of fucked up because it like, and this is before the person
don't-
has gotten into the group. Like what they do is they bring you outside of normal society so that you can't have actual other people who aren't going to participate
You
and
don't wanna have
contradict
We're
you.
going to go,
Conflicting
whoa,
opinions.
man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and so the
You're
feedback structure is cut off.
Right.
And it's just like, no, everybody seems happy, right? We're all smiling. We're all smiling. It's great. That's what it reminds me of, and it's super creepy.
Reminds
That
me
is
of when
super
kids,
creepy.
like when your friend goes away to like Christian summer camp because like they just get sent there by their parents or something. And you're like, all right, man, we'll see you in 2 weeks. See you in 2 weeks. So yeah. And like they never really like somebody else shows back up.
Or
They're, like,
they
dead in the
show
eyes.
back up and they have like a straight up crucifix like carved into their arm, and you're like,
oh,
you got rough with
no.
it, man, huh?
Yeah, it's gross. And you know, as
Or
we were talking about, the
conversion camp
isolation
is basically
keeps.
what we were talking about.
It kind of is like that.
What was that movie we watched that was like
That was cool, yeah.
that was like it was like Pray the Gay Away, but it was really in like a 90s early 2000s.
The cheerleader.
Yeah.
It was like a pro LGBTQ
Something cheerleader.
kind of ridiculous comedy.
90s
Oh,
movie, and
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going to
yeah.
remember the name of it, but
It was something
very
cheerleader, the
good.
right cheerleader,
Yeah.
or
It was so good. So good.
It had that girl who played in Orange is the New Black in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Natasha Leon.
Yeah. So if you're listening, look that up. But until we can figure out the name,
I'll do the thing.
once potential follower. What a good segue. Just abrupt. Once potential follower has agreed to their first meeting, the methodology of cults is to continuously invite the person to move to more and more meetings. This person is received with great zeal. The other followers will be as interested in and courteous to the potential recruit as long as it takes for them to buy the facade of benevolence. A typical potential recruit is treated with a warm welcome and is subject to being called things like brother, sister, thus reinforcing the idea that they belong to a group as a family. There is oneness in all of this. The next step is to simply make them feel invited to conforming and committing to the group. Peer pressure takes hold as a recruit thinks about joining. Ideas like, I don't want to disappoint my new friends, and it seems fine now, so I'll keep checking it out, and this is the perfect place for me, are all ideas that the recruiters and followers are trying to reinforce. If a potential recruit has passed the vetting process, seems willing to learn, and is interested in conforming and joining, the recruit gets taken to the next step. Indoctrination, baby.
Woo!
Welcome to
That's
boot
what, like,
camp.
I think right up to there is where the Manson family lives.
In indoctrination land?
No, right before they don't really. I don't think they did too much indoctrination. I think it was more just like making out in the desert type stuff.
And I think it was just more like, not even indoctrination, but being like, hey, you know how bats fly? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, you're high as shit on drugs.
Yeah,
That means you need to murder. And they were like, that does make sense.
That's what, like, I truly, out of all of the cults, like, they're, like, kind of, like, put on a pedestal as, like, the big one, and I truly think it was just a bunch of people alone in the desert just being like, if I do a bunch of LSD, like, I see sparkles, and then
I
you
like
just talk to
spiders in
those
my
people that do
brain.
anything, like.
I definitely think so.
And they had a bunch of, like, doom buggies, and they all just wanted to finger bang each other, and they had a great time.
Well, on that note, you know what won't put spiders in your brain and finger bang you? The commercials that you're about to receive during this break.
It's a break.
Break.
Thank you for listening to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. This week's podcast was brought to you in part by the following contributors.
Mechanics Anonymous, fixing your bad habits since 1993.
Rattlesnakes and Rednecks, family owned and operated.
The Flattern Foundation. Check out why Saturn is flat at theflatternfoundation.edu. Chocolate Jesus. He makes me feel so good inside.
Samsung, the only way I sing.
And of course, by viewers like you. And now, back to a little bit more of Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
Welcome back
Yeah.
to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. Podcast written in very much a sober state and delivered in various states of inebriation.
Back in the saddle again. What?
Plug.
That's
Didn't say
our
anything. Didn't say anything.
that's our resident rock and roller, Rock and Roll Joe.
Yeah.
Hey, Rock and Roll Joe.
Woo!
So, how you guys feeling about one the cult podcast tonight, and
I'm
two,
ready to be
about
indoctrinated.
starting the Black Sheep Bad Apples cult.
Oh, I didn't know we were doing either one of those, and I'm so like
We're doing
pleasantly
both of them.
surprised.
So if anybody wants to
man.
join our Cash Mandala, send a
$100.
$1,000 money
Oh, yeah,
order
yeah.
to P.O. Box.
PayPal.me/fourth corner.
Yeah,
if you
or
want to
that.
send any less, send it to me, and then I will get you on the like internship to maybe being in the cult.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
We'll have you
But the
hold our
Cash
mics.
Mandala is definitely a good place to start if you were hoping to at someday get in the cult.
And there's always room for upward advancement. So, like, if you're stuck here for a year or two, just remember, we've got a position for you. We're just trying to make sure that you're ready. You're ready for that transition.
Yep.
Because
Well,
this
we
is
have to wait till
important.
God tells us you're ready for it. Like we can't just give you the position.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
God in
The
giving
best-
us the knowledge to give it to you.
The best way to make that happen is to probably come over to my spot and move rocks by hand.
Yep. The 40-pound rocks.
Any pounds really, but
If
we're
we're
making
gonna
a
have
trench and
If we're gonna have a place of worship, I mean, I just have
yeah,
to
it's
interject
a
that
holy,
we need.
the holy trench.
Yeah, no, we need to build the place of worship,
Well,
which will be the house on this property.
See, that's what you're
Yeah.
going to be
So-
donating to, listeners.
Right.
You're going to be donating, when you donate to Fourth Corner Productions, to us
To God.
building
If
our
we can
church
build
and
the
steeple.
house, then
To
we
God,
can
yeah.
be closer to the
To
you
you
so-
and deliver the message from God.
Okay, well, my message is you donate to me and we'll kill God together.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, like that's
Hell
what
yeah,
I'm
dude.
going for. And
Okay, I'm
like-
joining his cult.
Yeah, metal, bro.
All right, so you shouldn't join his cult for the specific reason of indoctrination. Indoctrination
rough.
is known by many different names, such as brainwashing, thought reform, and coercive persuasion. These are all
NLP.
describing similar techniques to take control and
And the
retain
Bell
control
system.
over followers. It is a careful and precise breakdown of a person's sense of self. Vanquishing it may be difficult, but once someone has become involved in a cult, their entire identity is hinged upon the leader and the group. There's no more questions about the self or their personal ideals. One simply conforms for the sake of blending in. For being a sore thumb is often punished, and in some cases, with death.
You know what's a great example of that that's not in cults is the public school system.
Yep.
It's
not a
exactly
place
what
for
the
smart
model of it
people.
is. Yeah, like you want to be the mediocre. You want to stay. You don't want to be noticed, and
The
you don't want
BC
to
grade,
be.
dude. Yeah.
And you will just get pushed right through.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly what the mentality is here.
When you said normalized society, I felt like it was almost a hypocritical statement because there's a normalized, air quote, society, which is like essentially everything you're explaining based on where you live and the leader you're following and however that works for your
Yeah.
society. And I'm
And
like, this
I
is
actually-
interesting. It's like a broad form, like, no, like we already got our big cult. Don't you start segregating
Well,
it.
and that's
Like-
that's the issue that I had when I was actually
Yeah.
writing that. When I was revising it, I came across normalized, and I was thinking this is the wrong word. But it actually I came to the conclusion that it's the most fitting term for it.
Oh, for
simply
sure,
because
yeah.
it's like the American culture, the Californian culture, the
So, and that's-
and so it became this thing where it's like normalized was the right word, and even though it's a weird thing to say out loud, I think it.
Well,
really
it's
fits.
normalized until you're fully indoctrinated in.
Yeah. Well,
and then like the big thing is to
then
be
it's
a,
mainstream.
Well, but it's also to be a mirror of the cult leader.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the big. That's
Well-
what most cult leaders want to like produce out into the world. A bunch of mini them.
Yeah, and actually, I would argue that cult leaders don't necessarily want that, except for the people that they're grooming. What they want is subservience until they find a person that more than likely they probably want to fuck, and they tell them that, oh, you're the goddess of this thing, you're the god of the other thing, and you're you can marry me because I'm the almighty holy
the Solar
one.
Temple broads right there.
Yeah, super weird, super gross. We're gonna keep going. So, indoctrination
Shit's
or
icky.
thought reform, it takes several different forms. And the first step is obviously deception. By tricking newcomers into thinking that their group is something that it isn't, it can get the potential recruit to agree to a cause or lifestyle they don't or won't fully understand. not until they're actually a part of it. These can be simple techniques like being misleading. As an example, just an example, guys, there's nothing in reality right now that's going on to reflect this. So just an example.
Kirby vacuums.
If you've got a group that is, say, really into white supremacy, they may just relabel themselves as a Christian group with very conservative ideas. They use a veil of piety and righteousness to create their family-friendly image. They may also use being misleading to deceive new recruits into misunderstanding the expectations that will be put on them when they're a full-blown member. They'll hide the fact that they may be doing illegal or immoral activities such as theft, abuse, and murder. And a group will hide a lot of their facets until such point that the group has control over the individual, and the individual is immersed inside the group as a neophyte, newly indoctrinated.
Yeah, and sometimes that'll be like years to decades.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people in like Jonestown had no idea what was going on until the day like all of that stuff happened. But like you realize very very fast who you could trust, and like what level of like secrecy like each person is in, and like you have to. It's a balancing act between all like. It's not that I'm impressed of all the work that they do, but like they do a lot of work.
Well, and what's interesting about that is that I think you have these members that are actually only participating because maybe a loved one is involved, and they're actually not dedicated to the belief systems, but what they do is they follow through with the protocols of the day-to-day life, simply because they're curious, and so they do. Some of them take years and years to be fully indoctrinated, and even then, if you like look at any of there's quite a few people from like Waco that as the siege was happening, they were like, yeah, I didn't really want to get this involved.
Yeah.
I was just here for the good times, and
That's what like I like the Jim Jones
just
thing
looking for
because
club.
all of a lot of the people in the Jim Jones whole cult, a lot of them wanted the social living. Like that was the reason why they were like going and doing what they were doing, instead of.
And it sounds good.
Yeah, some people it was a church. Some people it was a
That's
system outside of the government. But
Probably
like,
why every commune gets labeled a cult by the government,
it's
like
exactly
pretty much immediately.
why. Like, yeah, like that
Even
and
the
Waco
ones that are actually
yeah.
not cults with like weird indoctrination shit. It's just like, hey, we'd all just like to grow vegetables here together. And it's
I
like,
really
"No,
want
you're a
chickens
cult."
to run
We're
around
we're
freely so I
really
can eat
not
meat
a
again.
cult.
Even Waco, like out of everything that they've done, like they never technically did anything illegal. Like I don't.
Well, the only
believe,
technical
like,
thing that they did illegal was that they were making semi into automatic weapons.
that was
and that was, from what I understand, like a $25 permit. Or
Yeah,
something like
and
that.
But
And
that
so
was
that was
also
the only thing they could
something
go
that
in.
their neighbor said about them. It
Yeah.
wasn't like fully confirmed, or it was.
I think they found all the guns though.
Oh yeah, okay. After they burned the
yeah,
place
like,
down
it
with their
blew
fucking.
up.
Yeah.
But
Let's
also
not get down this rabbit hole. right?
Oh,
No. Actually, let's
have you-
reserve this for another episode.
Oh man, the tapes just came out too. Have
Oh,
you
yeah,
listened
yeah.
to them all?
No.
Oh, it's good.
So,
At all,
as
not
we've already
fucking
discussed,
all. I haven't listened to any of them, Joe.
Oh, David said to light all the gas. But go for it.
as we've already discussed, cult leaders may use techniques such as chanting or speaking in tongues to create an altered consciousness state. Drugs are often used as well, creating a hazy world in which people are easily susceptible to persuasion. So we've talked about isolation and how it cuts people off from any form of opposition. It enforces the idea that the cult knows best and has the ultimate source of, again, the capital T truth. Cutting off members from the outside world can create confusion, loss of perspective, and the fabric of reality can actually be distorted, allowing a stronger need to hold on to the ideals presented by the group itself. Some group members will also or will disallow unsupervised contact, only allowing a recruit to have genuine conversations with loved ones under the supervision of elder members. This can help spread the idea that the people on the outside of the group are evil, dangerous, and or wrong. And this helps breed feelings towards the next step, which is called induced dependency. Induced dependency is where a cult will demand unquestioning devotion to the group and then make you dependent upon the group for basic necessities. The members must spend every moment being subordinate to the group leaders and the cult leader. It requires the elimination of the identity beyond the group and replaces it with feelings of the individual being evil, sinful, and worthless without the group, especially religious groups. These feelings can lend themselves to the idea of being independent and having critical thought. So these people think that they're independent and having critical thought, but that has been eliminated entirely. It induces a warm contentment found in the presence of being held in the high regard of those around you, because you depend upon their word for validation.
Okay, so that one, do you know Un Shirikyo?
Oh, yeah. Not super thoroughly, but...
So the big thing that they believed was polka. And it was like
music?
No, it was a reverse karma, where that they believed that if they like killed you, they were getting good karma on them because you were getting into the afterlife in the right place.
Whoa.
So like that was they got so indoctrinated in that like they were able to like hit Unshirikyo Asahara is the guy's name, and he got to the point where he was able to just tell people he wanted release his karma. That's what he would say to people, and they would think it was a blessing to go and kill this person and anyone around this person just to release his karma into the atmosphere because they were going against the mountain wizard.
That's exactly what we're about to get into, actually. Well, more or less.
Wizard.
That was the first name of their cult.
So,
Really?
if you're going to be a part of induced dependency, what you're going to do is you're going to try to vie for the leader or your upper echelon's favor. And this starts with them controlling every minute. As I said earlier, this can extend from sleep to work to worship, and in some places getting married, having sex, and conceiving children. The autonomy of the individual is stripped away for the greater good. And this leaves the devotee in a state of not knowing what else to do but to please the cult and its upper echelons. Submission becomes identity. Decisions, for the most part, are effectively removed from the daily chores and labor and tasks of the individual. In order to continue breaking down and rebuilding the potential member, any talents or skills, unless they can be harnessed and utilized for the group, becomes something to be devalued and, in some cases, things of which to be ashamed. The group has to strip away the inherent value in which the new recruit holds themselves. By demonizing and belittling talents and skills, the group furthers the need for validation and gives the recruit no reinforcement to continue on with these fruitless practices. And by withholding food and water and forcing followers to work arduous jobs with long hours, the leader or leaders can effectively create a lapse in judgment or mental fog that keeps members from being able to think clearly, and it creates and it also keeps them from creating effective arguments for their grievances.
Well, and actually, that's actually what I was thinking about when I was thinking of Unshirikyo, because another thing that he would do is he would be like, so your journey today is you have to do 10,000 up downs. I don't know what they call them there, but where you have to do a push up and jump up.
No,
but he would do these things that would not be able to be done. And their whole culture is...
They hand out impossible physical tasks.
Exactly. And
right.
So if a Messiah tells you
move
that...
the rocks at my property.
There must be a way to do it. And it's you trying to go down that journey.
And it's that, and also for instance, if David Koresh had no use for musicians, he would then just kind of berate them. And this isn't something that I know he did, but this is an example that I'm going to use. He would just therefore berate them for their lack of skill to such a point that they didn't want to play or sing or do anything like that ever again. They didn't want to be good at golf. These people don't want to be good at anything that doesn't directly help the group, because that creates a sense of identity. I'm good at running. I'm good at basketball. I'm good at piloting. No, you're not. You're a fucking cult member.
So
and that's what their point is.
The Amish don't play music or create art, or
it's easy to control people like that because
they don't participate in shit that
Is
gives a sense of self-identity
Yeah.
or is self-expressive.
yeah.
Only
Same thing with
things
the
that are
clothes.
group expressive and group identity.
Yeah, and it's really weird and really gross, and it honestly, like, reading some of this stuff, doing like the research for this episode really made me cringe. And so we got a couple stories that we're going to get to later in the episode, but like I just really wanted to really broad stroke this whole
Yeah.
thing, just because I'm sure we're going to be getting into some cults after this. So
Oh yeah.
So, by their own admission, the potential recruits stating how evil, unworthy, and horrible they are. Other members are allowed to viciously criticize the prior mistakes and misgivings of that the recruit confesses. Many, if not all of these, are the members of the same onslaught at some point. By acknowledging that the group is the only place where the recruit can find redemption, the recruit is granted love and admiration with acceptance for his dedication to his, quote, path of salvation. And so this is what I was talking about when it comes to like group shaming. So essentially they'll sit somebody down in a room, and basically it doesn't matter if they're religious or otherwise. What they'll do is they'll actually say, we need you to state all the horrible things you've ever done in your life. And what this, again, does is it breaks down their sense of identity. You've been a terrible person. You've been a sinner. You've had sex. Whatever it was, they just punish each and every member. They all sit them in the circle and just berate them for being the person that they were before they got into the group. And it's really interesting because it's a way of like doing a peer pressure kind of like school bullying thing where it's like,
Well, it's also a way to get blackmail on somebody.
it is, yeah. And in a lot of cases,
people use those
Yeah.
things. Like a lot of them are group activities, but Scientology is a one-on-one auditing session.
Yep.
And then like you have to go back, you go back in your entire history, like past lives, and like if they find out that you haven't been like quote unquote telling the truth, like they tell you have to re-audit and give another $10,000 and start all over again.
Yeah, and it's this way to make you feel like really guilty for just basic human things. You know, it's kind of like how the Catholic Church has confession.
But also absolve, like where you could pay to get
Pay
your
to be absolved.
Yeah, pay to be absolved. Like before.
I think
any of
Scientology
that.
is like that. I don't think, you know.
No, the Catholic Church was before all of
literally
that.
was
Oh,
just
really?
like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. What was that called? It was.
Absolvation, or it had like I don't remember exactly.
No,
but
there was a weird term for it where it was
Yeah.
like giving a gift or something was the
Yeah.
terminology of it.
to
where it's
make
like,
sure
you give us a gift to the church and
get the souls out of hell.
Yeah, and then, like-
if I gotta pay to make that happen.
yeah, the
I
headline was
guess.
like, "Give us money for your sins," and then
Yeah.
the byline was like, "And we'll absolve you of them. You just have to pay us."
And then like they don't have to do that now.
No.
Like it just happened to be a cult that worked out long enough where now they could just kind of reap what they already sowed, and
Yeah.
then like kind of just milk those veins for the next 10,000 years and be
Yeah, for sure.
fine. Like,
An indulgence.
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 That's what it
oh,
was
that's
called.
sexual, and I don't
Dude,
like it.
Latin-
it's always
Latin
sexual.
Gisa?
Indulgiza.
From indulgio, permit, to permit. Right.
Indulge.
A way to reduce the amount of punishment one has to undergo for sins.
But that
Speaking
was
of
also
punishment-
a big thing of not too much of what we're talking about now but just people being the Catholic Church convincing us that being poor is of godly. And like if you were rich, that's not of godly. If you were poor, you of God. You're of people. You're of Jesus. And like the Catholic Church had a long time of them being like, the way you get closest to God is you be poor.
Yeah, and it's a way of being like, you're really good when I say that you're being good, and when you're being bad, I need you to be better.
Yeah.
And that's a term that goes that's called love bombing.
We talked about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Excuse me for the cough. Love bombing by the leaders is another way in which control is exerted. By keeping all the members competing for the adoration of the leader simply has to alternate praise and love with punishment and scorn. It keeps all the members uncertain of their standing in the eyes of the leader, which only reinforces their dedication to the group ideal.
Basically, exactly how you would train a dog.
Basically exactly that.
Exactly how you train a dog.
Or like if you were a serial killer and you wanted a sidekick, because like you're also like trying
Jesus
to get
Christ.
you're trying to get them to
What,
take
Manson?
over the cult
Right.
after you're gone too.
I associate sidekick with like Batman and Robin,
But,
not
but
Manson
Robin
and
wouldn't
friends.
take over Batman, or he went out and did his own thing. You need him to stay the fuck there. It's like Jeffrey Dahmer,
Get
the
the
guy
gimp.
that
I need one dude to just
that he
back
turned into a
everything I
zombie.
say. So I don't seem like the only one. It's like I need one parrot on the shoulder that's like, yeah, he's right.
Your
No
little
doubt, he's right.
sycophantic,
Like every time.
Like
So like, but I don't know about the leader, but I like the sidekick. And if he agrees with that dude,
He must be
then
doing pretty okay.
I guess I can't argue.
Yeah. Well, and that's a state called dependence. Boom, great segue. After establishing dependence, the leader may choose to punish individuals with or without provocation by utilizing either physical or emotional abuse and trauma, with the end result being that individuals feel like the cult is the only place that they have identity and family. The recruit has nowhere to go and no one who understands and supports them. By withholding necessities like food, water, affection, etc., the leader or group can also implement a system in which people who are well behaved are worthy of food, water, beds, and social interaction. With the idea that one is tied to salvation through this group, the logical dichotomy of the group is being doomed to suffer eternal damnation if one chooses to leave, especially in doomsday or religious cults.
That's what Tom Cruise does in Scientology. He's the guy that like
Just makes everybody panic.
if you're an SE or whatever, it's some weird stupid acronym or something, and then like as soon as you're that person, then you have like weird celebrities that like gang stalk you.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
I don't like that at
Imagine you like trying to go to the police and you're being like, no, it was Tom Cruise, and they're like, yeah, all right, and then they just push you off the corner right there, man. Like,
Yeah, I think I'm looking it up right now, actually, but there's a documentary called Citizen 4, if I'm correct. So I'm going to look that up real quick. And what it does is it talks about it. There's this one guy from this really famous news station, and he gets an interview with a former Scientology person and gets to walk around and do a documentary on it. You know what? And I'll just get back to that a little later, actually. Because it's super creepy, dude, and very
it's
weird.
It's hard to talk about Scientology because they are the Harlem Globetrotters of like the cult world, where like nothing has ever stopped them. Like they got like
stop us now.
religious tax evasion or whatever. Like
Right, they have religious status.
they have everything.
like-
They won, and like the guy hasn't been here for 30 years. I don't know how long L. Ron Hubbard's been dead, but like
Not
it's
long enough.
easily like it's two people has passed through its hands. It's gonna be here forever. Like it turned into a true church.
Yeah, it definitely had. And this, I just love hearing about the origins of it. Like, when you get
he
fucking
made
L.
bets
Ron
on it.
Hubbard. Well, when you get L. Ron Hubbard going on to sea adventures, dude, it's like, it's such a good story. We're gonna have to cover it at some point.
Sea
Oh
adventures.
yeah!
You mean like when he got caught on his boat with like
Don't spoil it for the listeners.
That goddamn manatee
Trigger
who
warning.
got a
So
fucking Coast Guard outfit.
So the next section we're gonna get into here is called leaving a cult. In the 70s and 80s,
Check, please.
cult deprogramming was much more serious than its toned down younger cousin called exit counseling, in air quotes.
Exit counseling.
Yeah. The way in which people leave cults are various. It also depends on the type of cult from which they're trying to leave. Some are more ruthless than others. So there's been like many cases of cults and cult like followers chasing down people and just literally dragging them back into the compound or whatever kind of, out bunker they have,
Bunker.
Yeah,
And there's
very weird.
also the other side of it, times where like they were trying to get their kids out of the cult, and like Scientology, where they brought their the police brought their kids back to the cult because they didn't want to deal with like the lawyers of their industry. So
Jesus Christ. So generally there are 3 types of former cultists. CultRecovery101.com describes them as, quote, 1, those who have had interventions, 2, those who have left on their own, or 3, walkaways, those who were expelled or they've been cast away. According to them, there's a lot of help needed for the latter of these 2. These people leave cults and end up without a sense of identity because, as we've seen and talked about, their identity was tied to the cult itself. They need to think through their feelings as they manage feelings of despair, inadequacy, guilt, shame, and again, especially if it's a doomsday cult or religious order, they have to deal with the pain of leaving the truth and the light.
How do
like
we
now
get
they are a sinner.
once you leave, then everything you did up until that point was wrong.
How do we
It's
get
a
this
very
person back
hard
to
thing to
normalized
realize.
society? Give him some pharmaceuticals.
Some pharmaceuticals should do them good. They'll like it real nice.
The legal cult.
Risky pill dispenser.
Yeah, give them the risky pill dispenser. And like a lot of this like sense of loss mostly stems from what Cult Recovery 101 discusses in their article, quote, Post-Cult Problems, an Exit Counselor's Perspective, written by Carol Giambalvo. The article says, and I quote, most cults respond to any criticism of the cult itself by turning the criticism around on the individual member. Whenever something is wrong, it's not the leadership or the organization, it's the individual. Thus, when somebody is told to leave a cult, and that person carries a double load of guilt and shame. Sometimes walkaways also carry a sense of inadequacy. Often they can think through these feelings intellectually, but emotionally they are very difficult to handle, end quote.
I mean, as a cult leader, I would be like, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's really it.
It's tough. Yeah, like no, all right, you want to think for yourself? All right, fucking leave.
Fucking do it then.
Yeah,
Go be with and again, like in the case of like religious orders and like doomsday cults, there's often this case of like, go ahead, like go and live with Satan or go and do the antithetical thing of what this cult is going to save you by doing,
And that's where I think there's a lot of organizations and communities that could be labeled a cult that get right up to this line right here.
but they don't quite cross it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
They're like, all right, you want to go, fucking go, I'll go. And I'm like, I think like especially like a couple years ago, you really see that in the in places that grow an illegal substance for like acres. And then like they're like, all right, well you have to like stay up here for like 9 months straight, and you're up here with like 6 people, and like if you're not allowed to leave here, we'll bring some like food up here every couple weeks for you. And it turns into like a very small version of a cult,
Like an accidental cult.
yeah. Well,
Where they're like, I didn't mean to indoctrinate you, but
So
I sort of kind
what's
of
that
did.
say about people in general?
That is more common than we think.
yeah.
That like maybe more people than are willing to admit want to just follow some rules or follow some
Or have total control.
No, people want
person.
easy. Like if
Yeah,
if
they
you're
want
able to
easy,
be like,
they want
hey, I can
answers.
give you the answers. Like that's a very like I could just follow you. I don't have to think. I could just like kind of go about and do it. Like that's a great thought in theory. And then like if you put all your eggs in that basket, like sometimes like you kill Sharon Tate.
This is true.
Like,
Yeah. And so getting back to the script, like the sense of having lost all familiarity is really like a sense of disruption to the person's day-to-day life. And so leaving a cult can be really, really traumatic because their beliefs have been exchanged for a drastically different understanding of the world, which undermines the social pinnings of the belief structure to which they subscribed. Without the rigorous structure provided by the cult, a person is left without any ability to grasp the actuality of the world that they left and the world into which they're returning. It's similar to some mentalities of people who are in and out of jail. Being outside of the walls of structure, confines of what is and isn't personal property, a person who feels left to the wayside or unable to find a starting point is practically doomed to return to the structure in which they are leaving.
Charles Manson.
Yeah. So, and without putting too fine of a point on it, psychologically speaking, those who leave their comfort zone are more likely to find themselves feeling uncomfortable and anxious. This is the exact point of leaving the comfort zone. However, it's designed to be a place in which one understands everything in the realm of observation, your comfort zone, and leaving this place forces these people who have left their cults to become unsure. This feeling of uncertainty, if positively reinforced, will allow the person to grow and expand the horizons of their understanding. But if this same feeling of uncertainty is punished or grows to be too unbearable, a person may return to the same place in which they felt the most familiar, the most comfortable. So there's a lot of fucking go back to cults in this case.
I feel like this is like it's almost like a classic example of like hippies back in the day that ate some acid and then they got enlightened and they were like, dude, man, the system, society, bro,
dude.
society. And you're like, dude, you're fucking high. And they're like, no, man. Like they figured it out. They're like, no, we're all part of the cog, bro. You gotta get out and stuff. And I'm like,
You're joking, but that's exactly what it was.
that's
Especially
what I'm
in the
like,
1970s,
yeah. Like the hippies
cult
realized the
boom,
American cult.
It was
you know,
the
like-
hippies lost, and like it was all these people looking for something extra and something else out there. And it was like there were so many people out there that were just grabbing all these people who were trying to find something more. And like everyone was so open there that a lot of people just got like kind of like swooped into it, and it's
like-
exactly it.
They're like, yo, the American dream, and then we're
why
like,
you see such a density of it from like the 70s into the 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so gaining an understanding of what mind control or brainwashing is, the first step in recovery. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little tiny break.
Little itty bitty baby
Little
break.
baby break.
Listen to our commercials. Yeah.
Commercials, yeah.
Follow our command.
And we're going to get back to it. Also,
Consume.
send us money.
but stay tuned. We'll be right back for more Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
I'll do that for money.
This podcast is brought to you by Fourth Corner Productions, creating music, podcasts, and more in the greater Trinity County area. Come on down to the Whispering Pines Trailer Park Food Court, where you'll find
Wonton pickup available in quarter ton, half ton, wonton. Come pick up your wontons at Wonton Pickup.
or come visit me down here at Pick and Pulled Pork. Whether you need some carbs or a carburetor, we got it here at Pick and Pulled Pork.
Or Sid's Seafood and Shake Shack in the driveway next to Dave's place, Unit 347.
Whispering Pines Trailer Park Food Court. Smack down on some delicious grub. Closed once a week for Monday Night Raw.
Located off of Highway 76, Beale Street, exit 47, left at the Texaco, then a right, a half a mile past the Bill Murray Memorial Park next to the bridge. If you hit the clam, you've gone too far. Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth.
Where we teach your kids to swim through the flood and outrun the plague. We walk on water with our new core program.
We'll teach them to shoot, garden, hunt, skin, gut, and can all their own food.
T-shirts are available at sfsbfscfy.gov.
You can order the Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth manual at sfsbfscfy.gov.
Log on to the Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth to get 15% off on all tickets to all 3 days of the Christian Fests He Is Written tour.
Solid Foundation Survival Bible Fitness Summer Camp for Youth.
Ready for revelations?
Now you will be.
Spoils the goal, size is the prize.
Did you regretfully forget to study martial arts? Are you a weakling? Are you scared? Do you lack courage? Are you just down on your luck, feeling blue? just want a little pep in your step or a smile on your face, well, come down to Karate Chop Emporium. We got everything you need to get back on your feet and feel good, defeat your nemesis. We got karate chops, fists, kicks, tick shots, headbutts. We got a guy down here who'll break a brick for you. It's freaking awesome. Ow! Come down to Karate Chop Emporium at 357 Q Street.
It's not a strip mall.
Or a strip club.
Swole's goal, size of the prize.
Thanks so much to everybody for listening to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. If you like what you hear, leave us a comment, subscribe, like, share, all those things. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to Black Sheep and the Bad Apples.
No kisses, Loren.
Sorry, I get really Joe Biden-y.
I know.
Shots fired.
So before we went to the break, as our listeners may remember, we're talking about what it's like to leave a cult, and what we're talking about is the recovery process. And so gaining an understanding of what mind control is, or what brainwashing is the first step in recovery. It helps the now former cult member to gain an inkling that the ideas presented by their group were perhaps incorrect. After having gained an understanding of how they were indoctrinated, the former member has to spend time sorting through their experiences to understand how a simple flyer at a college campus, for example, could lead them to their current position. If the understanding of how indoctrination works can be understood by the former cult member, according to Carol Giambalvo, quote, they can use that understanding to sort through their cultic experience, to see how they came to change their behavior and beliefs as a result of mind control. They can assess what, out of that experience, is good and valid for them to hold on to, end quote. So
It's like how America was made.
So I'm going to have to take down the posters that say free beer and then a bunch of other stuff about the show underneath.
well, no, it's like you might like the band Free Beer and their posters are good, but what you're going to have to do is change the musicians in the band.
Huh.
And that's kind of what Carol Giambalvo is saying. She's like, there might be certain aspects of like, for instance, a religious order that's like dedicated to doing community work and to be like oriented towards taking care of other people and being kind of selfless and altruistic. And those are good qualities. And so when you leave a cult, you're also trying to kind of filter through if that's a quality that you want to keep or not. If this is a quality that actually means something to me or means something to other people. And that's where a lot of the part of the mind control kind of comes from, because when you leave a cult, you leave everything that they believed. And if they were out there actually doing some good for the world, you have to reevaluate that and reevaluate why you're approaching it in that way.
It's a very easy way to hide a cult too. Like
It
if
is,
If
yeah.
you're doing charity, you're doing good. Like Jim Jones was one of the best people in. I don't remember if it was Chicago. It was some like big area for racial, like bringing the different races together. And like that's why a lot of people in his congregation was African American and older. They really got caught in because of the good that he was doing.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying at first African American was an age, because you said African American and older, and that really confused me for a moment.
He did pretend to be another cult leader for a little bit, and this was a large African fellow that already died, and his soul transferred into his wife, and then she was running the cult.
Whoa.
So he came back and said that he did that, like the soul actually transferred into him and like tried to take over the whole cult.
Jesus
Hardcore.
Christ.
I've been looking for that
It
one
didn't
for
work.
years.
Though. Yeah.
You don't say. Jesus. So no matter how one begins the process of deprogramming, it is always an arduous one. And there is a long list of things that can go wrong, and they mostly seem to come from the place of from which the former cultist was recruited. Stress. The loss of a goal or endpoint is devastating to some people, and the sense of purposelessness, rather, the feeling of disconnect from the righteous, the just, the fair, the certainty, can wreak havoc. Here's a long list that I've shortened from 25 to 12 or to 11 attributes. And these are provided by Cult Recovery 101, describing some of the issues that may come from somebody having left a cult and who is receiving help for it.
I was thinking it was a 12-step program.
No, there's a lot of things. It's like 25. Honestly, I think it's closer to 30, but yeah, I honed it down quite a bit.
Okay.
And so I'm going to skip over some of the things. But number 1 is depression, which is kind of obvious. 2 is guilt. Former members will feel guilt for having gotten involved in the first place, for people they recruited into the group, and for the things that they did while they were in the group. Number 3 is anger. This will be felt towards the group and or the leaders. At times this anger is misdirected towards themselves. Number 4 is alienation. They will feel alienation from the group, often from old friends, that is, those who were friends prior to their cult involvement, and sometimes from the family. Number 5 is the fear of going crazy. Number 6, fear that what the cult said would happen to them if they actually left might actually happen. Number 7, spiritualizing everything. This residual sometimes lasts for quite a while. Former members need to be encouraged to look for logical reasons why things happen and to deal with reality, to let go of their magical thinking. Number 8 is inability to make decisions. This characteristic reflects the dependency that was fostered by the cult. Number 9, just straight up embarrassment. This is an expression of the inability to talk about their experience, to explain how or why they got involved or what they had done during that time. It is often manifested by an intense feeling of being ill at ease in both social and work situations. Often there is a feeling of being left out of sync with everyone else, of going through culture shock from having lived in a closed environment and having been deprived from participating in everyday culture. Number 10 is a term called floating. These are flashbacks into the cult mindset. It can also take on the effect of intense emotional reaction that is inappropriate to particular stimuli. And number 11 is impatience with the recovery process.
God damn it.
Yeah. It's very difficult to understand fully the extent of the hardship to which people will go to follow their beliefs. And it's even more of a wild ride looking at how those people can go through and come to terms with their former beliefs and to find recovery. But the craziest history we can look into is what started off with a little term called cult deprogramming.
I thought you were going to talk about like how the Catholic Church got us to change the like the year that we were going to be like living in to make it like BC and AD, because I think that's the craziest thing a church like a cult has ever done. And like,
Let's put a pin in that because that sounds really interesting to talk
this
about.
like changes the whole course of history.
I have
Yeah.
The 2 whole books.
Yeah.
I feel like I watched a pharmaceutical commercial and all the symptoms lined up with me. I think I may have
That was
been
the
part
Pope.
of a cult, but
The
I
Pope did
don't
that.
know how to explain it or know what it was. I'm just like, God damn it, I think I was involved in a cult, guys.
You weren't.
I don't.
We all
Shit.
were.
So, cult deprogramming, it all started with Black Lightning.
Ooh.
Very
Is
imaginative.
that a fucking great movie from the 70s or
Oh no,
something?
he's a superhero, all right.
Black Lightning was the nickname given to one of the most well-known cult deprogrammers named Theodore Roosevelt Patrick, better known as Ted Patrick.
Ted Pat.
He began in the early 70s after having spent time as an activist for the black community in San Diego, California. Without any formal or professional training, he kind of just sort of like dove into the whole deprogramming cult member thing.
What year was this?
He more than dove
the early
into
part of the
it.
70s. Yeah. And his methods varied from case to case as well as across the years, but he started with force. In 1971, he was approached by Miss Samuel Jackson about her son, Billy. Her name is Mrs. Samuel Jackson. Didn't get any more information than that. Thought it was pretty pertinent information, though. So, our buddy Ted Patrick was approached by Mrs. Samuel Jackson about her son, Billy, who had recently been recruited into a group known as the Children of God.
Oh, Oh, they're the worst, man.
They're the worst.
It's really
Billy had
find the story of Billy. The story of Billy in the Children of God cult is like literally it's the worst thing that we like physical evidence of a cult that we have. It's I won't bring up anything that's in it. It is.
Let's cover that on an episode.
I'm tired of these
It's not even
motherfucking
something I
members
think
and
we
this
should bring up in
motherfucking
it.
cult.
Yeah, like it hurts your soul.
All right, so
Too soon, Sean.
again, Billy had gotten into contact with the Children of God, but he had been out of contact for a while, and she was concerned about his well-being. So when she approached Patrick, what really struck him was that just shortly there in the same range, I couldn't tell if it was weeks before or weeks after, so it was in the same time range, but that his own son had been approached by the Children of God, and he had almost left with the same cult.
Yeah.
And then it became personal.
Oh yeah.
After
There
investigating,
needs to be a movie about this guy.
there really
right?
does. There's a documentary about it.
No, I want a
We'll get-
movie, and
yeah.
I want it to be Denzel Washington.
I was just
and
gonna
I
say
want it to be
Denzel,
fucking
man.
kicking
Seriously.
people's ass.
That man on fire, Denzel,
Yeah.
right?
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Grenades and
Hell yeah,
bombs.
dude. Hell yeah.
he did some intense stuff.
Yeah, so after investigating the Children of God, Patrick was horribly disturbed by what he saw as deceit and lies, and he began planning out direct action. As Patrick developed what was called cult deprogramming, he was called all across the country by parents desperate to see their children. He became famous for daring daytime kidnappings of cult members, where he would tie them up and subject them to his deprogramming, which was a lot of non-consensual questioning sessions.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. When you start tying people up, I think it's questionable.
Yeah, in an article
It's a
from
lot
Cult
of
Education,
straight-up kidnapping.
in an article from culteducation.com, Patrick describes these sessions in his own words. Quote, "When you deprogram people, you force them to think. But I keep them off balance, and this forces them to begin questioning, to open their minds. When the mind gets to a certain point, they can see through all the lies that they've been programmed to believe. They realize that they've been duped and that they come out of it. Their minds start to work again." End quote.
I feel like this is exactly what the cult did to get them
It's
there. And he
weird,
was
right?
like, I'm going to use the
Exactly.
same exact
Yeah.
tactics to
Yeah.
get you back to, what we say, normalized society or
Yeah.
whatever, type of deal where it's like, they're like, yo, wrong cult, bro. Wrong
Yeah,
cult.
wrong cult, dude.
Come back home.
Come back to this original
Yeah.
cult that you
were already
in.
part of a cult. Don't start straying
It
off
was
the...
a bigger cult that we
It's-
all agreed to.
Come on now. You want to be part of the group, right? I mean,
The forks
society.
cult.
I
It's
mean,
the cult where we all use forks and like all kinds of stuff like
it's,
that.
watch your P's and your Q's. Just don't, we already had a set of boundaries and rules. And now you're trying to manipulate those and use your own, stop that. You're getting influenced by the wrong subject right now.
Yeah.
Come on. Come back home.
So, Mr. Patrick deprogrammed thousands of people during his career. If I'm remembering correctly, I didn't write it down in the podcast,
Oh,
which I
yeah,
should have.
he's
It's
a
between
fucking
2,000 to
all-star,
5,000
man. Like,
people.
yeah.
I think it's 2,000, but don't quote me on that.
So he has a following as well.
No, he doesn't.
cult.
He doesn't, and that's the point of his job. Sometimes he was...
When you're deprogramming someone, you could put something else in there, though.
I'm sure that's what every cult leader said. It's like, yo, you've been
Deprogramming,
programmed
more
to
like
think this way. Let me
reprogramming.
deprogram you.
All I'm saying is
Obey,
sometimes he was
consume.
known for kidnapping Ivy League students, and sometimes he was known for having been on network news for an interstate car chase in the Pacific Northwest where he kidnapped a cult member and ran from the cops and cult leaders. He even challenged the courts when he was brought in on charges for some of these crimes.
Well,
The
hell
cult-
yeah.
It's hard to argue with it. Like
It
it's
really
like,
is.
yeah, like
And we're about to get into some of that too.
All right,
okay,
Robin
cool.
Hood.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So the Cult Education Institute uses an excerpt of a book by Flo Conway and Jim Siegelman called, quote, "Snapping, America's Epidemic of Sudden Personality Change," end quote. In their excerpt, they talk about how our buddy, Mr. Patrick, changed the legal system. Quote, "He made American legal history. In his ultimate defense of the U.S. Constitution, Patrick challenged the confusion of First Amendment rights surrounding the cult controversy and drew an important distinction between Americans' guaranteed national freedoms of speech and religion and their more fundamental right to freedom of thought. In precedent-setting cases, U.S. courts confirmed Patrick's argument that by, this is their quote, artful and deceiving means, the new cults were in fact robbing people of their natural capacity to think and choose. To that time, it was never considered possible that a human being could be stripped of this basic endowment, end quote.
Right.
And we didn't know that from World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps not.
It's
Well, and it's crazy that he had to basically like try to fight to make a law for it.
yeah, like it seems like a thing that should be already on the books.
It is,
Lots of
but it's
stuff.
not like written into law. Type
But-
of deal
but
where they're
we
like,
did
it's
some
just a
bad
moral
stuff.
thing at this
Yeah.
point, and now it's like a legal thing.
And there's that
where
quote
they
where
took
you can't-
morals
you
into
can't
legality,
legislate
and they were
morality.
like, okay, you can't
Got it.
do that because that's legally immoral, not just personally immoral.
Yeah. We have to fine you or charge
All
you.
right, we have to actually punish you now because
I mean, I don't see like it's not too the idea of kidnapping somebody who's been brainwashed who legally has lost their own
Individuality?
individuality. Yeah,
That's the
that's
big
not.
one, I
It's not a
think.
big jump from doing that to like saying someone's a danger to themselves or others. You know, or a doctor saying like stepping in and being like, "Well, I can't actually let you do that because
It's ethically irresponsible.
I have a responsibility to protect your well-being, and by letting you do that, that would be counter to that. And so I can, as a doctor, in an official capacity, step in and say, you are no longer in faculty of yourself, and I'm going to make decisions for you now.
I think that
You
and
get a
that's-
lobotomy.
No, but like it could be you 72-hour observation period in a psych ward at a hospital. You can do that.
I feel like
if your
that's-
family calls the guys in the white coats.
I feel like that's a classic example of like the battle, however you explain it, the argument between whether or not you should be allowed to commit suicide.
Yeah. It's very...
So, like, if you give authority to that, should you be allowed to?
Well,
Or
and
can
it-
you not? Or you, if you say that to me, and I'm more in authority than you, if that makes sense in a simple general, I get to make the decision on whether or not you're in your right mind to
Yeah.
make that decision.
So
Let's put
don't
that
quote
aside.
me on this, but I think in countries where it's not illegal to commit suicide, that you can't just do it. You have to like go before a panel of
There's a
people and
physician.
talk to
Oh,
them
okay.
about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I
And
got
stuff
I'm
like
gonna
that.
quote
And, like,
that
so-
him on that later on.
We're going to keep going with this and
Roll
put
it,
a pin
Bubba.
in the whole suicide by choice thing. So that's not tonight's subject. Very fun, though.
It will come up.
It will.
It's a, yeah.
It'll probably come up more than we want it to. So as well as being like kind of a pioneer in some of the like these really cool like legislative thoughts and the way like things were going to be changing in regards to the way that we looked at people, as you guys were talking about, people's like faculties. So as successful as he was, he also lost a series of cases for crimes like unlawful detention and kidnapping, and he was even wrongfully convicted of a kidnapping case in July 1976, which you might note is the 200-year anniversary of this great nation.
Bicentennial.
Aw,
Yeah. So his
such a little baby.
yeah, his methods, though effective in many cases, were also horribly disturbing and invasive. The documentarian Mia Donovan was young, just 13, when she ran into black lightning for the first time. You can find the article, quote, "This documentarian's personal journey into the wild, kidnapping-filled world of cult deprogramming." You can find that on refinery.com, or refinery29.com, rather. The interview discusses the dark aspects to cult deprogramming, and according to the author of that article, Elena Nicolau, Patrick, quote, was a stranger rummaging around her, Mia Donovan's, house, confiscating anything he deemed vaguely connoted with Satanism, which was a broad category that included her Sonic Youth albums and Stephen King books. She was the unfortunate victim of the Satanic Panic era, and her parents called Patrick to pull her in from the grasp of Satanism, which she was not participating in. Her brother, however, was subject to a similar treatment and was left with severe psychological scars. Mia Donovan describes her brother Matthew's experience in the Refinery 29 article as follows, quote, "It was the early 90s. Matthew was really into heavy metal and its iconography. He painted his bedroom black. He had upside down crosses painted on the wall. A very typical heavy metal kid.
Yeah, he was cool.
As a teenager, I knew that Matthew was rebellious and hung out with the bad kids, but they weren't a cult. My stepfather, though, was convinced that Matthew was in a cult. He was desperate to control Matthew. When my stepfather hired Ted Patrick, I didn't understand that they brought Matthew into a hotel for 5 days and tied him to a chair. I just knew that they were overreacting. I knew from where I was that me and my stepbrother were sane and they were crazy. Then Ted left. When I was 17 or 18, I read Ted Patrick's book, which was in our house. His deprogrammings made more sense when I was reading about Jim Jones, the Moonies, or these other more stereotypical cults." End quote.
I get you with it, but it also makes me think about just people that like fucking pedophiles. I feel like those are the people that like kind of just like build up scenarios that take pictures of kids.
Yeah. So Patrick was able to do what he did so well because in the case of cult members from the Children of God, he, quote, was able to sit people down because he knew the Bible so well and exposed the contradictions in the group's interpretation of the Bible. He would debate them, end quote. He worked with detained people for days on end. He'd rent out a hotel room, and after using incredible detail to basically perform a heist to obtain his captives, he would tie them up and discuss the group. Days on days would go by, living in this room, ordering food, sleeping, and just simply talking to these captive cultists. Many of these attempts were successful. Plenty weren't. As the years passed, Patrick got into more and more trouble, as well as having been on television and having his name and face broadcasted and popularized. Other versions of deprogramming were beginning to take form. The modified and most current version of this is called exit counseling, which we've discussed earlier. And we're going to cite Refinery 29 again here with Mia Donovan's words. Quote, "Several of them, the deprogrammers, that came of age in the 70s are called exit counselors. Their approach looks much more like an intervention. Say a family member is in the group and that the people are concerned about. They'll work to lure that person home. Then everyone who cares about that person will be in the room and will have an intervention. They'll ask the person if they'll consider talking to the exit counselor for 3 or 4 days. If after that they're still convinced that the group is the right place for them, they'll leave after. It has to be completely voluntary. There really can't be any force at all."
I'm sure it's a lot of fun, and like afterwards, you all get together and you have like
Imagine
Like
the
ice cream sundaes.
Imagine the potluck.
It's a good time.
Lasagna.
Have any of you guys ever like been in a pray away the gay like ceremony?
Oh no.
No.
No?
Oh,
No?
no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I've seen it twice.
Nope.
Like,
No, thank you.
like a full group of people like around somebody, like do the Lord's Prayer, and then like look up to the like the heavens, look back down, do it again, and be like, "All right, you're straight now. Anything you do is on you," and like push the girl away. I saw that
Jesus
happen
Christ.
like twice in my community.
But I'm a cheerleader.
Yeah.
So if Theodore Black Lightning Patrick was a force to behold,
Hell of a name.
I want to introduce you guys to a motherfucker named Rick Ross.
Rick Ross.
GameCube, Nintendo, 5% tint so you can't see up in my window.
So the world of
Not that Rick
deprogramming
Ross.
has slowly been
That's
litigated.
Jim Jones. Mike Jones.
The world of deprogramming has slowly been litigated out of existence due to the forceful, coercive, and harmful techniques that were utilized in Ted Patrick's exploits.
Black Lightning.
Homeboy Black Lightning.
That old chestnut.
Deprogramming has changed forms and names since the time of Patrick. As we read earlier, it has shed its forceful, captive-taking ways, but kept a lot of the conversation. One of the pioneers of the current and modern iterations of deprogramming is a guy, shitting you not, named Rick Ross.
Rick Ross is a boss.
Alan Ross is the dude when it comes to deprogramming.
He sold like the most cocaine out of like anybody in the West Coast, right? Isn't
I'm
that
pretty
like-
sure that's why he's good at what he does. Because cults love cocaine.
Long hours.
Yeah.
So,
There's something magical about names, but like keep going and let's keep
yeah.
going.
He created the Cult Education Institute, actually, which we quoted from earlier, and is the leading authority on everything cults. From their mannerisms and techniques to exit counseling, he's the fucking guy that you want. He's the guy that you fucking call. He was consulted during the 1993
Basically
siege.
the Ghostbusters for cults.
Yeah.
Right.
He was
Got it.
consulted during the 1993 siege of Waco, Texas. He's got 500 people in his, quote, "the people I've saved" body count. And that's my quote, not his. And he has even met with notorious bad guys such as Keith Raniere, leader of the master slave sex cult NXIVM, which is pronounced Nexium because they're fucking stupid assholes. This is,
Yeah,
it's the same
like,
cult.
It's the girl that was in Smallville.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the same cult that got Allison Mack, the Smallville TV actress,
fucking
charged with
insane.
fucking sex trafficking. Yeah, this
Wow.
fucking
They
dude, Rick
branded
Ross.
people.
He's the Rick Ross of cults, homie. He's fucking pimp.
What?
That was also a cult where it was basically the women in charge. Like that guy had like his own little thing going on, but for the most part, like it was a female. Like she was, Alex Mack was a main contributor
She
of
was
that cult.
she was one of the head
That's
honchos.
why she's in jail
no,
now.
prison.
Prison.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
insane for a rich person. A rich white person?
It was.
That doesn't happen.
And the
a
really
lot.
thing that's the thing that really bothers me is that she's still well, from what I understand, she's allegedly still super dedicated to fucking Keith Raniere.
Well, she has a brand. It's hard to go back from a brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't look into that, listeners. It's not good. Don't look into it.
No.
So
yeah.
Rick Ross, though, because I'm only going to call him Rick Ross, not Rick Allen Ross. Rick Ross has noted that since the age of deprogramming and exit counseling, cults are still on the rise. Easily accessible, available to almost everybody, and an extremely easy to use platform that allows for the creation of isolation bubbles of information is the internet. The internet has been particularly useful as a recruiting strategy for cults because it allows the potential recruit to do their own research. Those are heavy quotes.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like the rise of cults has happened since the internet.
Yeah.
Mormons are still going strong.
No,
Yeah.
they started out early and stuff.
Yeah, but it's they still have the knowledge compared to all other cults where like they were they were still like the knowledge that we have now about Joseph Smith should get all of those people away from the cult.
Yeah, but
yeah, but the internet's not to be trusted in cults.
and we're gonna get
It's
to
just
that.
the way
in
you get
just
to
a second.
research to get into the cult. Wait, I confused. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
You good?
Yeah, my brain kind of like snapped a little
You want-
thing.
You want me to take the reins?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right.
You need another beer?
Bring it on home.
Yeah.
The internet allows the potential member to self-isolate and only listen to one group, person, or message without having to reinforce, coerce, or put on a facade. Literally, one can simply go online and type into Google an idea and immediately find millions of hits for or against that idea. If one wants to isolate and control individuals in today's cults, one simply has to argue that the media is portraying their group badly. Find a Google search result that confirms that and move along without having to have all those like pesky little pieces of evidence to the contrary bouncing
it'd be
around
like
in your
a
head.
group of people be like, "Hey, like what the news is saying is fake." But like
MSM,
if
baby.
we keep going together, we'll all stand together, and our leader might be the leader of something.
Yeah,
I retract my original statement. I don't think I'm a cult leader type.
no,
Sam,
I don't think you are.
I
Sam's
think you're a cult
Sam-
leader type. And if you can Google that real quick, what a cult leader type is. I
We've
would-
discussed it, so apparently you're just not paying attention.
You want to know a fun fact? I think about most cult leaders is I think all of them have big dicks.
I
Jim
retract my
Jones
last
and,
statement again.
David Koresh. Jim Jones and David Koresh both, and L. Ron Hubbard, all three have been confirmed to be like packing.
Very
A
interesting.
lot of serial killers, very small dicks. Cult leaders, very big dicks. But yeah.
So I've said it before, and I'm gonna fucking say it
Very
again.
interesting, Joe.
I'm telling you, man.
The internet is providing-
Look it up.
The internet is providing good resources for confirmation bias. In an interview, oddly with no author listed, Morty, excuse me,
Not a plug.
with no author listed by thebookofman.com, which seems to just be like a website discussing issues that concern men, and it's not at all
Seems
like
like a men's right,
No,
right?
no, it's not like an incel kind of thing. It's like it just seems like it's a straight up like GQ kind of thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like,
might be
what
worse.
kind of
I
herbal
don't know.
supplements are good for like later stage life prostate health?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but by the Book of Man, Rick is interviewed by the mysteriously unnamed interviewer. But in this article entitled "An Interview with Cult Specialist," Rick Allen Ross. Rick Ross describes the dangers of a new world of the internet and cults. Rick Ross is asked the question, quote, "Given that everybody has access to information via the internet, why are cults still on the rise?" To which he responds, quote, "The internet cuts both ways. It can be used to find the historical facts concerning destructive cults, or it can be used to obscure or spin the facts in self-serving and deceptive ways. The same goes for social media. Destructive cults routinely use YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter to recruit and manipulate followers. They also use platforms like PayPal to collect money. There are now groups and leaders online who recruit and exploit people through the web without ever meeting them face to face."
Yeah,
End
for sure.
quote.
So, cash mandalas.
There's
Yeah.
No, seriously, this is exactly that. Like internet, it's like mildly, it's like a mildly cultish kind of like. We know people who have been caught up in these things, like,
GoFundMe is a cash mandala.
and
Arguable.
I literally sat for hours talking to this person, where they're just going on and on about how like good the thing and like how great this thing is and how like it's eventually going to pay dividends, and as long as they just keep at it and like, you know, make sure they got to get people to, you know, join the mandala and put their money. And I'm like, this is like,
It's shitty socialism.
it's not even shitty socialism, dude. It's like, it's shitty aristocracy on some level. You know, like there's only
fair.
one person benefiting from the money.
Mm-hmm.
No one else is getting paid money. No one ever reaches the middle to get the payout. There's only like somebody that like this somebody, but you have no proof that that person actually got paid or that they're not just the person who's running the mandala anyway. Like,
Actually,
they could be 7 of the 8 people on the fucking mandala. You're the only person that's just paying into it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and actually the interesting thing about that is like in the age of information and the expansion of the internet, this also poses another danger for people online. Popular culture is often used to put on a facade in some groups, hosting yoga and meditation retreats, life coaching, things fucking like that. If you're into it, there's a cult out there trying to exploit it for their own benefit. They're still using the same manipulative tactics, but their veil is harder to see, thanks to internet trolls, shit posting, and things like that.
And there's also like very simple ones that have been doing for like decades, where it comes to like Freemasons and like people that are like groups that are like set in stone that are just like, hey, you gotta pay us like monthly, and,
Yeah.
and like
And so-
it's all the same
Yeah,
thing.
It's whether or not your cult is worse than my cult.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
Based
in my
on
opinion,
what I think,
in my opinion, niche beliefs held behind their iron fences are something humanity, even in the age of information, will never truly rid themselves of. And as such, cults are something that are just going to keep continuing and have continued on to this day.
I will always fight hidden knowledge. That's my whole thing. That's what a cult is. It's hidden knowledge.
Yeah.
And
Right,
that-
whether
that's-
it's fake truth or
no
you know,
matter
you know,
what it
whether
is,
it's fake
like,
or
if
the
you're trying to
truth,
hide
yeah.
it, yeah, I will work very hard to figure out what it is, and like to me, it's all about like trying to get us all on the same plane.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say, I
like,
feel
all
like
of that
that's
stuff is trying to hide it from all of us.
I feel like that's kind of a definition of a cult, and more so because a lot of the explanations of a cult go on to like normal society and how we all just are growing up in one random way or another based on how we believe, what we believe in, and all this other stuff. But if you're not allowed information until you succeed into a rank of something,
Yeah.
that's where it starts to get like what I would think would be a stereotypical version of a cult, where it's like, yo, this is secret until you gain access through taking steps, if that makes sense, and showing your
Exactly,
contribution in
yeah.
that. And that's where it starts to get a bit like, all right, like we all should be it's the old American like access to information is freedom type of deal and stuff like that. So if you're going to restrict that from me and I have to be part of a group to get that and then work up the ranks, that starts to get a little controversial, you know.
If we all start on the same plane, if we all start with the same general knowledge, then it'll be easier for us to kind of excel that plane and keep like bringing us up.
And what really pisses me off is that we've got this internet that is supposed to be like the pinnacle of information, and at some point we're all supposed to kind of find this consensus of information, this understanding of how the universe works. But we just keep fucking breaking down into smaller and smaller fucking categories and smaller little like cults that like believe all this crazy shit. And that's why for me it was like it's weird because it's so divisive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And
Yeah.
and like just having beliefs is so divisive in today's
Ideas
culture.
instead of beliefs, man.
Yeah.
Ideas change, beliefs are permanent.
Mm-hmm.
People are small group primates. That's what we're apes. We aren't really designed to live in huge herds, you know. So there's some natural inclination for us to form small groups inside our society. Most people do that in a pretty healthy way.
Exactly.
But like joining a club, which is not a cult, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can have a group of individuals with rules that's not a cult, right? I think the thing that makes it a cult is that you've got this leader that all things, come from.
With
I looked at the definition
with
of cult
no
earlier,
like
and one of them was really like this.
Emphasis on the leader.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like this misappropriated belief in a person or idol. Of some sort.
with no like outside influence, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So if
right.
you're like you question something, you're like, wait, but doesn't this kind of and they're like,
No, we don't talk about
hold
that.
up there, and there you went through obviously a bunch of different ways where they try and separate you from the ability to do that and stuff, but it's just that misappropriation in you being able to question what may be morally correct in your own mind, if that makes
Tyranny
sense.
is the destruction of nuance.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think it's something like that.
It's a quote, I can't remember who by, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm thinking of that, and the idea like knowledge is power, that's the whole like premise of the cult, to like demonize or illegitimize anything that is counter to your ideology.
I was
going to
say, or
right, that's the cult.
I was going to say, or what takes you out of what you think is normalized, if that makes sense.
You become special.
So now you're somebody or a group or however you define that and stuff in a certain circumstance is trying to take you out of a normalized society that you're used to and reform you to something else and stuff. Where we say then there is the people trying to deprogram you based on what they consider a normalized society based on where you're at. So we could probably, and I see this in a simple example, is like National Geographic, if you will, where we look at islands of tribes that are stuck on rituals forever and this and that, and in a way we could say that's a cult and stuff, because they are not changing their ways, and that is not normal and stuff. There's islands out there that will
that's just an
murder
indigenous
you
culture.
with spears, and but that's indigenous
culture.
It's an indigenous culture. Right. But if you go within a society and start trying to make a culture, now you're a cult because you're rebelling against whatever is in that area. So if you went to an island where there was a tribe, if you will, and change the ways of the people of that tribe that have been doing things forever into a new reformed area, like Christians, let's say for matter, tried to go to an island where there was an indigenous tribe that has not changed for thousands of years and stuff, and tried to convert them, well, you're a cult to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like an alien.
That happened not too long ago in Australia, where the guy went over in the kayak to
that was India.
Yeah, that was outside of India. It's called North Sentinel Island.
Oh,
the guy that got killed by
Joe something. I just remember he had the same name as me.
Joe Chow, I believe.
Yeah, that's the reason why I remember it so well.
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
What an idiot.
That happens, and then you get hit with a fucking butt full of arrows, and you die.
Yeah.
So this is
because they were like, don't fuck with us, and you were like, I've got a Bible, and they were like,
they hit the Bible
we
first.
literally
you heard
told
that?
you. Yeah.
How would you know that? How would anyone know that?
So fucking
body
good,
cam,
man.
dude. Actually,
there was
How
one
amazing is
survivor.
that
That's not an official statement.
How would you know that?
Why wouldn't you? That's why you don't go back. They're that good.
So that's the end of our podcast about cults. How are you guys feeling about the episode?
I'm ready to start a cult.
Excellent. That's not what I was.
So I got a
going
thing that
for.
my life, the big thing I want to do in my life is I want to take down a cult.
Oh.
And there's a couple ways I've always thought about doing it.
Should you? I mean, we can edit this out of the podcast.
One that, the main one I think I could start now is basically I want to start a cult with all other cult members.
Like an
and the
elitist
benefit
cult.
for them is once we get all these cult members,
Federation
kinda
of cults.
Yeah, it's linked together. It'll be all over the world. It'll be fine. And if you don't think that I will stay at the top of this cult,
Sam.
then stay with me.
Sam, we have to kill him.
You stay with me.
have to kill
We
him
keep
right
it going, and I link you all
We
up.
gotta kill him.
So you would do really
Yeah.
well if you were in the United Nations as an actual influential person.
Oh,
but
yeah,
unfortunately, you decided to not go that route in your life, and now
Thank
you just have ideas
God.
about it. That's on like
Yeah, if you had,
there's
you wouldn't-
people
you wouldn't
working
be
on
here
this
enjoying
I
as
know.
you
my pleasant
speak.
company.
But if I
Just
stay,
imagine all the infighting. God damn.
My thing is like I'm like, all right, look, I'll tell you the greatest way to hypnotize someone, and the greatest way, and I just get like David Blaine with me, or like someone,
like it.
or like not David Blaine, like Penn and Teller. That's who I'd want with me. I go with those guys, and like me, Penn
combo.
and Teller, like I think we can like easily take down a cult.
That's such a weird fucking life.
Oh, it would be fun.
Observation.
My
Coming
thing
this
is,
summer
like,
from Pothole Studios.
Jesus
go in
Christ.
there and then like start as their groundskeeper and then just completely poison all of their food. You're a cult. Like, as soon as all your food goes and you don't have the boiled vegetables for your cult
that's-
members.
So, Sean, how did you enjoy tonight's
That's
episode?
when mutiny happens on the ship. It's like
Exactly.
Yeah, no, for
Well,
sure.
let's
Yeah,
start there,
I'm
man.
following you. Yeah.
How did you enjoy all the
I mean, I felt like
all
it.
the podcast.
all of the podcasts?
I felt like it related to like my personal circumstances growing up in like normalized society, if you will, and by that I mean like
Obey,
public
consume.
school system, the American style of life.
Yeah.
All these things there. It's a very, if you will, ritualistic way of
Babylonian
thinking. Like
style.
pledge allegiance to the flag, and you'll get a little bit punished if you don't. Well, you're young until you don't have to do that. But we've changed coming up, peer pressure you brought up earlier.
Indoctrination.
Yeah, indoctrination. That could be you just growing up with friends around the block because you're
Like,
not cool. And what
technically
are you?
just
You're
growing-
not gonna do it. Your friends are picking on you, type of stuff.
yeah, like
until
technically,
you find
getting
your,
older is just indoctrination.
No, and that's
You're
on,
learning
like,
shit.
It depends on where your family
Growing to
came
be a
from,
bitch.
the friends you grew up with, all these other things. Where it's like
Nancy, a bitch.
technically, and at least our style of living, which I think is kind of universal in the world and stuff, is like everybody's got their culture and their way and what we think is right and wrong, and that's where morals come in and all these things, which I think is the true argument with cults, where when they finally get pinched, and the law enforcement agencies, whatever that may be, start to question their moralities, if you will, and stuff, and decide they need to step in. It's like we were saying earlier, the self-choice suicide deal. Well, who's the doctor to tell you that you want to kill yourself? Well, he's the one deciding you're in your right mind.
Kevorkian.
Well, that's the government in
That's not what
America
God was.
deciding whether or not you're living by society's standards that are based on what we've decided to put into law as morally correct.
Yeah.
Go to another country, those moral correctnesses are not the same, and you're just,
And-
you go to that country at your own risk, based on our standards.
And that's the
But
interesting
based on
part
their
of,
standards, that's normal fucking living every day.
well,
you know
and,
what I mean?
and again,
So
that's the
it's-
interesting part of like cults is that like we already live in these boxes that are like what's it to be this person, what's it to be this person, socioeconomic within the laws and all this stuff. So there's like a very small box in which to operate, and then you get the layer of being in a cult where it's like you can't eat fish on a Tuesday, but you can only eat fish on a Thursday, kind of like weird ass rules, and it becomes this like this whole like you have to be entirely absorbed into the everything that is these groups in order to even participate a little bit in what they're doing.
Well, and that's where I feel like even with like, let's say, a religious cult and stuff, how many people with an argumentative statement, how many people does it take to believe somebody is actually a prophet?
One.
Because
Yeah, exactly.
that's what I'm
Fucking
getting at
one.
though, is like,
Fucking
I
one,
mean, to
dude.
be legally a prophet, or however you want to take that, because
You
we
can't legally be a prophet. That's
no,
not
I get that, but
Call
we,
my notary.
we criticize Scientology and Mormonism and all this other stuff and that, but who's to say John Smith wasn't a prophet? It's based on followers and who believes, and now it's controversial and stuff. We
Yeah.
all argue on
That's
Jesus.
no, this is like-
It's based on almost like a popularity contest to a degree, because based within a system.
It's like what cult is going to be bigger than the other cult?
That's where I'm like, so it ends up becoming
Who's got
obviously a
propaganda?
cult with a small following is going to get a lot of criticism and be like, you're obstructing the system, versus a cult that's already stabilized and like take major companies, Are you going to say Amazon's doing wrong, or Microsoft, or this and that? No, you're going against the way
Heaven's
things
Gate
have.
and Scientology, man. Like, you see Heaven's Gate, and it was like they had, I think, at the most like 150 people, and but it went around for 30 years. Like they were around for a long time. And they didn't think about even like going through their exit scenario, because they were always the weirdest people in the group.
They stepped
so-
outside the
Yeah,
norm, if you will,
they were
and now
very
it's
close
considered
around here,
cultish,
too.
and that's where I'm kind of like, I really like tonight's episode, but I feel like it's, if you get deep with it and stuff, it's a bit controversial,
Oh, yeah.
because everything's kind of a cult to a degree.
There's a lot.
And we
of
don't
things
know
that are
if a lot of
cults.
them were wrong.
I mean,
A suicide cult, you don't know if they were wrong.
we could argue about that, but let's do that in another episode.
Yeah.
Because I think what's important to note here is that like there are a lot of groups, or like religious orders, people who just have like again just like groups that have a lot of these characteristics that are recruiting people. They ask for money for you to join and all this stuff. That doesn't make them a cult either. And so there's a big difference between like.
Just makes them smarter than you.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between like taking the money that you're getting and then providing a service to the people who are subscribing to it,
It's an
and then
interesting
taking
line.
money from people, asking them to work hard as fuck so that they can provide for you just in case, in the case of doomsday, prophets, the end of the world happens. This will be heaven on earth. I had a vision about it or whatever. There's a very big difference between donating that same money to charity and buying goddamn guns because you're a church.
Well, and I mean, that's on like donating money and all these things. I feel like it becomes controversial because it's like, was the labor union
You
a
don't know where that
cult?
money's going.
Yeah.
So
Like it
I've
becomes
talked-
like doesn't have to be religious. It
I've
could
talked
be
about the Shakers before. It was a religious sect of Christianity. They didn't marry or have children, and oftentimes they provided orphanage to children. They would, whatever that is, provide homes for orphans in their little communities, and the communities were sort of insular, but you would recognize like a Shaker furniture set. You'd be like, oh, that's what that is. Like you've seen this sort of like little
Yeah,
kitchenette
yeah.
table, the Shaker leg. It's like this.
That's Gucci.
Right. They made brooms. They made all these things, and they interacted with normal society. And the only way that they had members was by recruiting people to become Shakers and believe in their ideology. I've often wondered, where is that? Is that somewhere in this gray area between just like an ideological viewpoint that an individual might have and a cult?
Is Winco a cult? An employee-owned business with shares in their own business, offering discounts to the general public outside of them.
Well, I would argue
like-
that, my idea of it is that, like, we all have this idealism in this way that we see how the world could function perfectly if it was only this way. And so what makes a religion versus a cult is the fact that now you're going to enforce this with a small group of people and try as hard as you can to extend your fucking tentacles outward and maybe get a position in city council and be able to work your way into implementing some of these ideas. And
Right.
this idealism may or may not be a pie in the sky thing, but what it is it's not something that everybody agrees to. And that's where the issue of like, that's where it becomes like crossing the line into a cult, where it's like, it's almost a forced way of living this life if you want, we'll say water, food, and a bed, as I was saying earlier. So it's just a really weird thing where it can happen spontaneously too, where nobody has had any cult activity before, and then one just explodes out of Oklahoma for no fucking reason.
I feel like the stock market is the internet of cults.
What?
I don't get it.
I can see it.
Go home, Grandpa.
It's
Drunk.
It's a money boost for a certain group of people. So if you can get that, I don't even know how stocks like truly work, but if you can get like one
you can
person,
understand it. The more you understand it,
Yeah.
you'll move up the ranks, and you'll be guaranteed money and success in that. But it's
All
a
right.
You guys
gamble,
want to
and
give
you
us a
gotta
couple
trust in
$1,000?
it. Like,
We'll invest it real
Just
nice.
we'll invest it so well. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and close this thing out. I'm gonna ask you guys. Do you have any final thoughts? We're gonna start with Mr.
I do have a final thought. I Googled, or I looked up the definition of the word profit earlier while we were talking about that, and I realized that there's this real strong correlation between like every religion and every cult, in that they all have a prophet, which is a person regarded as an inspired teacher or a proclaimer of the will of God.
That sounds like something familiar that I may have said earlier, but I can't put my finger on.
Well, it works. It works well to do that instead of saying that you are God. There's like a
the
bunch
less
of cults.
popular option.
Well, there's a bunch of cults that say that they are God. There's a bunch of cults that say they're prophets of God. There's a bunch of cults that say that they know God. But
all derivative of the same
Yeah.
idea. They're all in. You could.
if you
quote,
say
unquote,
you
call
are
them
God, it's
prophets.
different than if you are in contact with God.
For sure.
It gives you that way of kind of stepping back a little bit and being like, no, God told me to do this. I don't know exactly what it means.
Apples
Let's
to
interpret it
oranges,
together.
sure, but they're both still fruit.
So, Joe, do you have any final thoughts about the show?
There's
Did you enjoy it?
I do. I like this a lot. There's one type of cult that we didn't touch upon that I think is very important, and it's there's a cult called the Finders, and it was this guy in Florida that was arrested. Very well dressed guy. He was arrested in a playpen with a couple dirty kids. These kids were arrested. Yeah, this is a true story. You could look it up.
Kids were arrested?
No, he was arrested, and the kids were taken into social services. And these kids never knew outdoor plumbing there, indoor plumbing. They didn't know a lot of simple things. And the big thing about this this cult was, apparently this was a cult of people working with pedophiles to try and raise kids to go into certain groups. And a lot of these people were arrested as CIA agents. And if you look up the Finders, you will find a lot of very interesting
By
topics.
interesting, do you mean super creepy?
Yeah. You won't
Very-
sleep for a couple days, and I don't
Yeah.
sleep. But I'm just trying to get you a little
another
bit close to
spoonful?
where I am. Oh no, yeah, it won't get me there. It'll just get me weird.
So, Sean, do you have any final thoughts about the
Oh, yeah.
episode? How'd you enjoy it?
Well, yeah, Sean, you go.
I enjoyed it. Money and God we trust.
Do you think us making our
Keep your
black
fucking
sheep
mouth shut, Sean.
Do you think us making our black sheep and bad apple cult is going to be a good thing to start with this conversation that we're going to broadcast?
I'm pretty sure if you're interested, you can write us to your interest in joining the Black Sheep and Bad Apples Cult
Send money.
LLC at P.O. Box 364, Hayford, California, 96041.
Send money. And also, before we go, I do want to tell the rest of you guys that there is one insidious following that we really need to target, because they are active and they are fucking life up for us. It's the group that likes Hobo Johnson.
Yeah,
Oh,
those
fuck
people that
Hobo
like Hobo
Johnson.
Johnson,
Fuck
they can
Hobo
go fuck
Johnson.
That guy's
themselves.
still around?
Fuck Hobo Johnson.
So
fuck his
hashtag
cult.
fuck Hobo Johnson. Where he's
Fuck,
taken away from our shit.
Fashion beef.
Fashion beef.
Suck a duck,
socks
I can
and
tell you that.
sandals.
Don't forget
Socks
to
and
look into
punk
Risky
sandals.
Pistol.
Yes, episode was
is there
brought
anything
to you
else
by
we want
the
to plug?
Risky Pill Dispenser.
Fourth Corner Productions is putting this shit on. Sean,
Yeah, plug.
thank you, baby.
Big ups.
Yeah.
Thanks for having a laptop.
And then we're gonna have
He also has a duck.
yeah,
And
he's
two
got
ducks.
two of them.
Yeah,
Two ducks
yeah,
and
ducks.
gives no fucks.
Ducks.
Dick Van Duck and Nervous Nancy, shout out.
Well, thank
Dick
you,
Van Duck's
also Mr. Joe, for being on this here podcast about them Colts.
Oh,
Mr.
wait till
Sam?
we actually talk about a cult on its own.
Oh yeah, Mr. Sam. As always, it was such a displeasure to spend time with you.
Yeah, sure, whatever, man.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for listening to my voice.
Yeah, and I'm
And, I
I'm the
hope
black
it was
sheep
as
of the
silky,
Bad
smooth
Apples,
as you.
and this
Oh,
is
you're
Loren.
still talking?
Brian
Podcast.
Podcast.
But Black sheep
break,
apples that are black.
Black and
Cut it,
O'Brien
cut it off,
breaking.
cut it
off.
Lauren,
They're gonna fight.
breaking,
Bad sheep and black apples.
Oh, God.
Black and sheep and Lauren apples.
One has a mace, one has a switchblade. I don't know what's gonna
Slap.
happen.